Hello, basement dwellers and scrufftards. Welcome to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Scruffy Tales. And we're gonna return to Kursk to take a look at how Ukraine pushes on in the town of Tetkino, and we're also gonna take a look at some of the other attempts to push into Kursk in the general area. So let's get on with it. First off, I'm going to show you these images. I thought this was kind of funny when the Russians were watching as the Ukrainians were driving straight through minefields and dragon teeth and what have you. And they were looking at as it was happening with their drones, and their reaction wasn't exactly cool-headed and calm. They were watching it and they were shitting their pants basically and wondering where the hell are our guys, where are our FPV drones and what have you. And they went, yes, fuck, holy fuck, he's going through the fucking teeth. And they're talking back and forth, and eventually they're saying it's an emergency, right? So they weren't prepared for this. They saw it happening and pooping their pants, as you might expect when your country gets invaded. And here we have Mayakovsk 73's map. You can see Ukraine has taken out some artillery in the area here in the Glishkovo Rayon, where you have these recent breaches back into Russia and into Kursk Oblast. Zooming in, we have the three known assault vectors, Novi Put, south of Beshalivka, and over here at Tetkino itself. If we're starting off at Tetkino, zooming in, we can see where Russia is striking a street right next to the border. Ukraine is launching attacks into the center here of town along the railroad. And here we have geolocated, confirmed that Ukraine has pushed roughly a kilometer, 2/3 of a mile along this street into Tetkino. And we've seen previously from Russian sources that they believe that Ukraine is operating in roughly this area, and that this is the area that they are contesting in Tetkino right next to the border. And then you have attempts to breach over here, where they drove straight through the dragon teeth, crossing the border, turning around and going back out, and they've lost a couple of vehicles over here. Interestingly, we've seen the same things over here at Novi Put, and we've recently seen updates of an attempt to breach here, and this is kind of interesting. I'll show you what we're seeing on these images. Right, so here we have Novi Put, and then you have this area. This here is this breach here. You can see how we have tracks leading up to a windbreak going through, and then going through dragon teeth and a ditch and what have you, and you have vehicles up here. Zooming in a bit and jumping ahead in time, all of a sudden you can see here you have vehicles flipped over. They're not flipped over up here. You have some vehicles right behind them, and now they're burning, they're on fire. So they obviously got hit by something. Did they hit a mine, a drone? Were they hit by artillery? Unclear. These vehicles though, I'm not entirely sure that they are recent. I know this one is not recent because there's a video from last year where you see this exact breach point with this vehicle. And since we're not seeing this vehicle, this is a Bradley, it's lost some tracks. I'm curious if this is an older wreck, abandoned vehicle. Not sure, but we're not seeing it destroyed. This seems to be the column trying to go through, and then they get knocked out. And I'm thinking that these two vehicles were left behind during the initial push into the area, and Ukraine was now trying to utilize this breach once more. A bit risky. I mean, you'd think that Russia had mined the bejesus out of this location. Thinking about that, yeah, maybe Ukraine did push through with a mine clearing vehicle, so maybe this is a more recent Bradley after all. Unclear. Anyway, I'm going to show you where this breach point was made famous a couple of months back. And it was during this assault. Let's play down here as we take a look. Might be some background noise. You can see Bradley's coming in. They're popping smoke out in the field. That is the breach where they just pushed through. It's going to be 2 Bradleys and an Abrams, I think. I actually made a breakdown video here, Bradley Assault American Fury. I'm going to provide a link down below of this push. And let's see what happens here. Second Bradley moves up, and there you see, right, where they launched the tow missiles at the Russian trench lines. Became very famous a couple of months back, right? So it's this assault point. And if we take a look, when they breach, take a look. Let's see here. Here you can see the dragon teeth, and take a look. What's this? That is that vehicle I was talking about. They're driving past it, going across out onto the field. So this is the location where we're talking about in those previous images. And if you want to take a look at my thoughts on this assault, I will provide a link to this video down below. So that would be this location. So in that older video, the Ukrainians drove through here, their breach point, and then assaulted north into the tree line here, where they opened fire with those tow launchers. And we saw them in the video driving past this vehicle. Unclear, like I said, when this Bradley ended up where it is. It's stationary here as well as here. And judging by these smaller vehicles, we can see that when they approach the breach point, something happens. They flip over and they are now on fire. So yeah, that's that situation. And here we have Deep State. They haven't updated anything. As usual, after Syrski had a talk with them, Deep State doesn't update as frequently or as accurately as they did before, for OPSEC reasons, obviously. But what we're looking at are 3 main assault vectors coming in to Tetkino, breaching over here, and attacking here, and also here. This point is the most recent one. This is, to me, a diversion to draw resources. Russian units now have to deal with this incursion, so it's going to be drawing drones, it's going to be attracting artillery, and Russian forces being prepared behind the lines just in case we see something bigger. Kind of the same over here. Russian units in and around Tetkino, they have to focus on keeping an eye on this location, and that means you have fewer Russians available to deal with this main push over here. So I think this is definitely a diversion. This, if successful, has the potential of pushing in to challenge Tetkino from the east, but primarily will draw a lot of attention from Russians in the area, meaning fewer assets and resources are available to contest the main Ukrainian push into town itself. And if we take a look at the Ukraine control map, zooming in here on Tetkino, we can see here how Ukraine has progressed. This here is Ukrainian positions on the 7th. That would be yesterday as of the recording. Pushing in along this street. This is where Russia has been striking at Ukrainian positions as they initially crossed in, coming through the forest here, building up troops, hiding, sneaking in close, and then going in for the breach. This is where Ukraine has been launching airstrike at Russian positions, and presumably we've seen some Russian strikes along this street, so maybe we have seen Ukrainians coming in along here. I'm thinking the main push is coming from the forested areas here along the railroad, but it seems as if Russia has been hitting this street in the last couple of days. But this is where Ukraine has been geolocated right where this windbreak here connects with the street. So if we move on over to Andrew, Andrew hasn't updated his map yet, but here you can see the Russian airstrikes and Ukrainian airstrikes. Let's see here, going back a bit, you have one day on the 5th, Russian airstrikes right on the border here, and then on the 6th. So this is a couple of days old by now. We'll see if it updates later today. But this is where we have Ukrainians geolocated in this area, right? So how far is that? Let's see. Say from here, this point, all the way over here, roughly a kilometer, 840 meters. So this is a kilometer in a day through what should be extensive Russian defensive lines, right? This is the forest here is a very good spot for the Ukrainians to build up troops in. The Russians knows this. It's close to cover within Russia where you can easily dig into basements and what have you. The Russians knows this. So presumably this should have been an area that the Russians were keeping an eye on, where they had drones, where they have pre-measured or pre-sighted, I should say, artillery and everything. So moving in here and reaching a kilometer in less than a day feels a bit impressive for this war by this war standards, right? Moving 1 kilometer at speed, 24 hours to move 1 kilometer. But in this war, it is impressive. Remember, whenever a side pushes 5 or 6 kilometers, everyone goes, whoa, that's massive. Here you have 1 kilometer in a day through border defenses where the Russians should be on alert. They should have a lot of surveillance on this forest because it is such a good spot to build up troops in hiding and then launch a surprise attack like the Ukrainians just did. So what is the point of all this? Why assault here in Tetkino? Why down in Belgorod? Well, it is to tie up all of these units. All of these Russian assets are now stuck in Kursk and can't be moved elsewhere because Russia needs them. If Russia weakens the line up here, it invites Ukraine to push harder at one location, right? So they must have all of these assets in place to make sure Ukraine can't push in further into Kursk or into Belgorod, right? And so the Ukrainians, they will keep harassing this part of the border, this part of the battlefield, just to tie up all of these Russian assets and resources away from the war in Ukraine. In January, Russia had allocated some 100,000 troops to the Kursk area in 6 months. We're now 10 months in, so I mean at least 120,000 would be my guess, as well as 10,000 North Koreans, right? And all you Vatniks who said there was no sign of any North Koreans, whoops, guess they were here after all, right? So this is the reason. If Ukraine moves away from this area, all of these units might end up down here in Kharkiv, right? They may end up here at Kupiansk or down here at Pokrovsk, or this is where Pokrovsk is, or over here in Toretsk, right? And also, if Ukraine moves away from up here and goes on all-out defense, then Russia is in control of everything that happens. If Ukraine just allocates all those units all over the front line, Russia decides where battles will be fought, when they will be fought. And that means Russia has an advantage because Russia can then build up their forces in an area in preparation for a battle they have chosen. And all Ukraine can do is sit tight and wait for something to happen, trying to figure out where the Russians will launch their next big battle. So Ukraine will always be on the back foot. Ukraine will always be losing territory without doing anything offensively, right? Up here, all of a sudden, tables have changed. The tables have turned. Now Russia is guessing. Will Ukraine do something? Who decides when battles will be fought? Ukraine. Ukraine can push in and start battles, and Russians have to be on their heels. They have to be on their toes to be ready to face a potential Ukrainian assault along this border, right? That means Russia has to allocate resources here in case there's a battle they don't know of, that only Ukraine knows is about to happen. Here, Ukraine has some initiative, and that is super crucial. I mean, armies want to move forward. They don't want to play defense. They want to move forward, because moving forward increases morale. Moving forward means you're winning, right? So it's incredibly important for Ukraine to have this offensive capability around Kursk and Belgorod, where they can actually decide when battles will be fought, when Ukraine is a threat to Russian positions, to Russian lines. So I don't think this is a waste of manpower. This was not a wasted 10 months. Ukraine knew what they were doing. They pushed in, forced Russia to allocate all of these assets away from the war in Ukraine into a war in into a Russia itself. And by continuously being a problem in this area, Russia will allocate more and more resources up here. Those resources will be taken away from the war in Ukraine. So you are effectively moving the war slowly but surely away from Ukraine into Russia instead. And that is the goal, moving the war from Ukraine into Russia, tying up Russian assets in Russia where they cannot support the front lines down in Ukraine. And this may maybe open up for a counter assault somewhere, because Ukraine at some point need to liberate territory, not just cause trouble up in Kursk. So if you can move assets, as many as possible, up to Kursk, that should, in theory, leave Russia weak for a counter push at some point, right? And I mean, it's interesting if you consider with the Russian celebrations going on for their victory over Nazi Germany in World War II, you're moving air defenses away from the front lines to protect Moscow. Ukraine pushes in here and draws resources into Kursk from the front line. Will something happen along this front line? Really interesting. We'll see what happens. That's all I have for you this time around. I hope you found it interesting. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine, and give them hell.